Today I will be touring my Factorio factory. This factory I built in 2018 and it was in patch 16.51. Today I believe the game is in 18.8, so this technology is completely obsolete. Some of the stuff that I have doesn't exist anymore. It's changed, there's new things. It's a different game today, but I have backdated to the 16.51 patch so we can tour my factory. I had a difficult decision of where to start this tour, so we're going to start right here on this iron mine. This is a bed of iron, and I have electric miners stuffed with tier 3 productivity modules on them. You can see that I get 918% bonus productivity, so I've put in millions upon millions upon millions of resources into mining productivity. It'll make sense why that is efficient as I scroll out here. So this is where my minerals begin to get harvested, and then they travel down these paths, these conveyor belts, to meet up with my iron ore distribution system. This is where all of my iron ore comes for this facility from maps, from mines that I have just all over the place. So here's another one of these iron mines. These belt systems are designed to balance evenly, so you can see that this input is constantly moving ore from all three of these and then shuffling them into these sorters. And then all of this group of mines and all of this group that make up this blue belt here, they combine here to make two solid blue belts of ore. And then those ore travel all the way down. They meet up with some other belts, flow through the system. Ultimately, I intake about 22 solid blue conveyor belts of iron ore to be constantly running the facility that we're about to go over. So they go through these sorters and into my iron smelting system, which is this weaving. It weaves like this for efficiency. This weaving system of furnaces, electric furnaces, that outputs belts of iron, finished iron bars. Iron bars go through their own special sorting system. This one is pretty intense. It feeds different parts of my facility. So all sorts of splitters and sorters there to achieve the flow densities that I need in these streams to run the facility. There's a copper mine in the middle. So this is a huge facility, and all of my mineral patches, you can see this one has 3.9 million copper left in just this field. So these are enormous patches, and the reason this happened is because I started the game hundreds of miles to the east of there. So I started the game right here, and I launched my first rocket from the base here. I depleted all the resources here, and these fields were like, 1,000 minerals here, like that's a 500,000 copper, and that was one of the biggest mineral fields available in the old spot that I was in. You can see this. I pretty much mined it dry. 7,000 stone left there. There's a 52,000 copper. So I had my base here. I used to have my sorters go through this car system. My old base was really primitive by the standard of the things I have today. But it was a pretty big base, I felt, at the time. I just run out of minerals, and I decided, given the scope of, that one's 4.5 million. That one was enormous back then. But given the scope of what I needed, I just filled up a tank with as much ammunition as I could fill and my nuclear power plant. And I just rode west for days and days, battling through. You can see these villages, these colonies of aliens. Battled through them for days, laid this train track as I went. For days and days and days. And I just kept going until, and this I'm going to zoom out because this is a while. I kept going until I ran out of ammunition. And then when I ran out of ammunition, I parked here. And I put up my nuclear reactor that I had stuffed into my tank with me. We'll talk about my nuclear reactor system in a little bit here. Basically, it stores steam and then pulls on it as an emergency backup. But when I started this base here, it was an emergency backup. It was just completely nuclear run. I basically looked for a spot with uranium and oil and coal and iron and parked there. And probably spent about 2 days of real time building this base here and just producing more ammo so I could keep going. And then later I would keep this base going. We'll come back to why that is too. So it had a little bit of its own mineral production going. I believe that. Yeah, I also have a spot out here. My copper mine is out here in the woods, surrounded by lasers. This one was fun. This belt runs out here completely undefended, but this base, this sub-base, doesn't get much activity in modern times. It is constantly under attack, but I am under attack in 141 places right now, so that pretty much, goes on all the time. So I parked here for a while. I made this nuclear base. I started producing uranium, which I needed to build weapons, which I needed to build my ammunition. And where does my ammunition get built? Here's my ammunition factory. And now to this day, this is still my only ammunition factory. I build all of my weapons at this base now. I think I build my nuclear bombs here too. Maybe I don't build my nukes here. Nope, I guess I just built ammunition here. I built ammunition, I built these nuclear fuel cells for my tank that my tank ran on back then. I also built these dynamite explosives. So the patch where these were released, these didn't used to exist, they added mountains to the game. That patch happened while I was living at this base. While this was my only active base, my original base had run out of minerals. Anyway, I camped here, resupplied for a couple of days, filled my tank back up with ammunition, and then just left the whole base here, and packed up, I made another nuclear plant worth of materials, and built some solar panels so I could, power the place. These solar panels are all it requires to power this whole ammunition base here. Also makes all of my train fuel. Oh, there's my nukes. Yep, my nuclear bombs are right there. And it makes all of my nuclear power canisters for my entire factory here. I do all of my uranium refinement in this system here. You can see where I have unsaturated uranium coming in. There's a couple of saturated uraniums on the belts there. And then my machines pick and harvest and sort them and, build this stream of endless active uranium that I can do whatever I want with. I can build nuclear bombs, I keep a full crate of nukes there, I can build these nuclear fuel cells, I can build nuclear ammunition, which I have full crate of here. So anything atomic gets built here at this base. It builds all of its own circuit cards on site, so it's completely independent from all my other bases. So anyway, I resupplied here. I got the solar panels up so it could run without absorbing, my limited, quote-unquote, limited nuclear energy. And then I got back on the road and kept going west. And I basically kept going west until I ran into this enormous 400 million iron ore spot. And that's when I started building my train back to my original base, and I spent a couple of weeks trying to figure out a system to ship supplies on my trains between my main base and my new base. And it just was inefficient. I would have needed so many supplies in hindsight with scope of what I'm building now that there's no way it would have been practical. But really the problem was these biters would respawn. And I had, you can see the shape here, these blocks here are where I had waypoints. I had built solar paneled waypoints that would repair and refuel the trains and stuff on their way, so they would travel like 3 minutes between waypoints and then refuel and stuff. But even those small gaps between them, like here for instance, the biters, if they hit enough biters, it would blow up one of my engines, and then the train would just stop and get wrecked by biters. And if that happened while I was not at my computer, like when I was asleep, which was most of the time my factory was producing, then I couldn't do anything about it till morning. So eventually I just packed it all up, took another train, I made the train extra super ridiculous long, and then as I was going I would pack up all my solar panels and stuff from these, and I just never looked back. On the way back to the 400 million iron punch I was discussing, I discovered this one, which was 180 million back then. And so I was like, oh, I'll just stop here. I'll just stop here and start building here. So that's where I started rebuilding my factory, and that's where we started here. So that was my iron system. That's the belts all my iron systems flow through to feed my iron ovens, electric furnaces. My iron electric furnaces then get distributed to my factory where iron is needed, and they also get distributed to my steel furnaces. Iron filters into the steel, bunch of steel gets made, and then my steel filters out into this steel feeding system that will feed the rest of this plant. So, like I said, when I came out here to build this, to expand my factory to here, I had already beaten the game. I'd already launched a couple of rockets into space. And I had these little sub-factories, these little group of sub-factories that I had built, that I just blueprinted over here. But they weren't very efficient. I just put them together, I was winging it, and it was kind of clumsy. It was taking up more space and more resources that were needed. So then over the next few days, in blocks, you can see how these parts of the factory are laid out in different blocks. Like this is a block here, this is a block, here's a block, here's a block. So I have all these little blocks. Here's this card building block. This builds red cards. And it builds all of its own red cards. It builds the wires and the green cards on site, and then has its own green card for each little block of red cards, and builds these streams of red cards that come out at the end here. So it builds all this stuff, and these are all different little blocks that I had, but I tightened them all up. So now they're all perfectly efficient. Here's my green card supply. This is an independent green card supply. So these are the green cards that get supplied to the factory. And the red cards make their own on-site green cards, make a stream of red cards. And then my blue cards also make their own green cards, and then their own red cards, and then their own blue cards. So they're all separate machines that have kind of got tightly fit together over time. Here's where I make my batteries and my yellow science packs. Here's where I make my red and green science packs, spaceship parts. Blue and purple science packs both share this engine line here. So that's why I kind of put them next to each other. So the advanced engines for the purple packs could be shared off the blue ones. My first one here, I had like 3 or 4 machines making these electric mines, for instance. And after tinkering with this block, the purple and blue block, I tinkered with longer than any other block I did. Turned out I just needed one with 2 speed modules in it the whole time. And 1 electric furnace and 3 speed modules. So this little block brings in, all sorts of oil, and red cards, green cards, stone blocks come in from a part of my factory to build purple and blue science packs, which it puts on this belt here. And then they go side by side here. Is that a rocket taking off? Yep, that's a rocket taking off. And those get fed through to here. You can see my yellow and space science packs meet each other here. And then I have this really long, kind of awkward row where all the science labs, I think it's 52 science labs in this row, operates this base. And then all those parts get routed back here to the rocket launcher, which also makes its own satellites on site, and fires a rocket. So this fires 1 rocket every 9 minutes. This fires 1 rocket every 9 minutes. And that's this whole block here. We zoom out, so all these little machines here. Here's my military science pack, which I only need when I'm building weapons technology. Here's my low density structures. Here's my rocket fuel. All of this block feeds this rocket launcher and launches a rocket every 9 minutes. That's what all this goes towards. So then, once I had completed this one, I went ahead and tightened all of this into one concise copy-paste block. And that is this. So this factory here, and this neat little block, is identical to the one I just went over all those parts of, except it's all packed into this neat little block, where it just, I paste the block on, I have my robot network put the thing together, I connect the resource feed here, these are all the dry resources, I think I run steel somewhere else, it's been 2 years, yeah, steel comes in at the top, and stone block comes in at the top, my liquid resources come in, and I attach it the same way, so now I have the block I just showed you, which takes up this huge area because it was all kind of designed here. And then copy and paste it into this small block here, which this block also shoots a rocket every 9 minutes. So this whole factory here actually runs 5 of these. So I have one, the big awkward one, the neat little copy-paste factory, and then, oh boy, and then 3 more copies of this factory, right here. These two are side by side. So right there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is 5 copies of my win the game in 9 minutes factory. So then, I tightened that up and went west again, until I found this new area. And out here, I redesigned it to take that block and all of my furnaces and all the resource distribution required to run the place, and made that into one copy pastable big block. And that's what this is. So this square here, look, I have this loading station, so my factory building train, which we'll get to, but I can just send this train to a new location now, and it will unload into these crates everything required to build this entire 5-block plant, all the furnaces, all the oil systems, the plastic factory. It'll build everything right out of these crates. All I gotta do is run this train up here. I have another blueprint that copies this sorting system out here. I have a bunch of computers that manage those. We'll get to that later. So I can make 10 rockets. I win the game 10 times every 9 minutes. So that's my production of Factorio rockets. Talk a little bit about how I power it all now. So we talked about this nuclear base. Everything has a nuclear backup now. I do have this nuclear base here that's its own backup system that used to be the main power here and now hasn't activated in a very, very long time. But I also have a larger version of that. Here's the nuclear backup, sorry. So how it works is, here's these nuclear reactors. And once they start cooking, they're going to cook for 2 minutes no matter what. You have X amount of energy that you can harvest out of them. And they get a bonus for the amount of them near them. And then we have these cooling tubes that heat steam, heat water that's in these tanks. And then during those 2 minutes, I have active steam. So this is all built for efficiency. This is designed to get me the absolute most bang out of my limited uranium. So anytime these tanks go below a certain threshold of active steam, which they're just keeping at temperature all the time, then all 8 of these plants come online at the same time. And they produce just enough power to completely use all the power they produce and fill these tanks back to capacity. And these tanks just sit there with that active steam on emergency reserve. When emergency reserve kicks in, these pumps begin to unload the steam into these turbines. And these turbines convert that steam into energy, which feeds back to my electrical network. And like I said, it used to be this was the primary power supply for this whole base. Now these solar panels are the primary power supply for the whole base. It's exactly enough to run it all. And my whole power grid is connected, which we're going to talk about more too. So when the emergency nuke plant comes on, it feeds all that power just to the primary power network. We'll go back to the main base. here's my primary backup, nuclear backup. So this is another version of that same layout. See, it's got the same like symmetry here. And whenever the alarms go off, these alarms go off when these tanks become empty, when they go below a certain threshold. These will load these active nuclear fuel cells into my reactors. They'll consume all that energy. Oh, we're going to autosave. Not going to let me scroll at all. They'll consume all that energy. They'll refill these steam tanks, and then the steam tanks will take them as they need them into these turbines. So in other words, the turbines are completely disconnected from the nuclear reactors. The nuclear reactors, when called on by the steam tanks, refill the steam tanks, and the steam tanks just keep the steam on reserve for whenever, it's kind of on demand, for whenever these turbines need it. For whenever these pumps activate, really is the truth. And they activate by this switch. So let's talk about that switch. I run these over the green wire. Over this green wire. This is a different green wire command here. But this green wire goes to this system here. I'm not really going to break down this because it's a little crazy. I sat up one night, all night, designing this. So these boxes are full of 100 fish each. Okay? These counters and math bots are always counting fish. Hypothetical, non-existent fish. They're always counting them. And they're building triggers, and they're building a bank of counts. This has gone 120,000 yellow square cycles. Yellow square is the output code of my fish counter, since they've last activated. In a nutshell, what this system does is it constantly asks my electricity network. You see this A100 sign here, right under where it says big electric pole. That's saying my electricity is at 100%. So it's testing my electrical network every 60th of a second. So every 1 second of real time, my computers here test my electric network 60 times. Anytime that electricity is below, I think, 4%, then it will turn on the emergency activators, which tells my steam tanks here to be deployed into these turbines, and their cousin sister steam tank system over in the nuclear base to feed their steam turbines, and it dumps all that power into my network. Then, when that happens, these pickers start to unload these fish into these belts. So these fish in these crates, these pickers take them, unload them. I think this one's backwards. That could be a hiccup. Maybe it's not. No, that one's definitely backwards. So these pickers will unload the fish into this crate. This car is going to get all the fish. These green pickers will take them out of these crates, put them into the car. Once there's something in this car to grab, this green picker will unload them into this crate. This yellow picker puts them on this belt. And when all the fish get packed into the crate, it will do a new check, which is about 90 seconds. And it will ask the network, should we turn off the emergency power circuit? That timing is kind of important for the time it takes for my lasers to consume my emergency power. But that's just my emergency power. It hasn't had to come on in a very, 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 very long time. I showed you there's 120,000 yellow squares on that. That's a 5-minute block. Every yellow square that it counts is a 5-minute block. So it's been at least 120,000 5-minute blocks since the emergency power system has had to come on at all. And I think the last time I came on was for a test. So it almost never comes on. This is the computer system that runs the steam tanks here. All of these computer systems in Factorio, by the way, are like they can just count things. They can count how much something is, they can add, subtract, divide, greater than, less than. So every computer component in this game that's all you can program. You just have to build a system out of that. So that's my emergency power system. My usual power system is this block of solar panels. So this block is one robot starport. So if you look at this, you can see the orange edge. It exactly fits all of those solar panels into one solar network, one robot network here. And the purpose of that is so my robot network is extended over my solar field, and so my robots can, repair and build and unbuild these as I like, and so my robots can fly over these long distances and recharge at any point they need to and not be slowed down. And this is important because I have over 300,000 solar panels in this row here. So it's an enormous block of solar panels. I have dark spots in the middle because there's no radar in this blueprint. So I have radar on the outside here. I have radar blocks on my outside lasers, but I can't even see for miles in the middle of my solar panels. But I know nothing's going on in there because there's no open space, and they all look just like this all the time. So 300,000 solar panels keeps it going. I have a 2-thick laser wall around the perimeter of every aspect of my base. I also have a train track with stations where I can have my character delivered to any part of the laser wall in case I need to do repairs. Here's my tank if I need to go to war here. I haven't had to go to battle in a very, very long time. This tank has been parked here, I think, since I cleared this area out, but I do have a couple of tanks loaded and ready to go in case I need to, but I haven't had to fight biters in a ridiculously long time. Here's them fighting me. Well, I saw them fighting on the map, but I just cook them so quickly. You can see they're constantly spawning, coming at me there. Let's find somewhere else they're coming at me. Oh yeah, they're all coming at me here all the time. Look at this. All the time. I'm just constantly at war with these guys. And these green ones are the behemoths. These are the biggest, baddest aliens Factorio has to offer in this patch. And they're just around the clock assaulting me on every side of my base. And they cannot get to my lasers. There's a dead zone here. There are 2 spots where they sometimes deal me just a moment of damage. Right here, one of these lasers takes 1 hit sometimes. And then maybe this laser takes 1 hit sometimes. But it's just 1 hit, and my robots are on standby, ready to repair all the time. So you'll notice between my bases, I have this laser wall with tracks, and this is because of the problem I described earlier when I was moving. I could never find a way to just run a railroad track across the land and not get intercepted by biters. So eventually I just made this blueprint where I have a railroad track with lasers, a double wall lasers on both sides, enough solar power and batteries to power them so they're self-sufficient with lights, with radar, with roboports, and I just got in my tank and just drove down my tracks and blueprinted these and built them as I went and protected the robots while they built. And then I have this junction here. This junction is because I want to separate the robot networks. So if I need something in this area, my robots from my main network will not fly here. I'll tell why that's important in a second here, but I'll show how it works. So these ones, you see the green line between them? That means those supply networks are just barely not connected. So anything I might need up there, and anything I might need from up there for here, transfers in these boxes. So if anything in either network calls on something the other one needs, they feed them from the supply here. You can also see these empty fuel cells where I take all my fuel cells that have been burned up from nuclear power and send them back to the plant for processing, for reprocessing. But there aren't enough. Like, it hasn't been necessary to move them for a very long time. So this horizontal network is all one network. And you see it becomes its own network right here. And then this is all one long horizontal network. And then it stops probably here. Yeah, it stops kind of here. And this is because if I call for something here, and it's coming from here, the robots will try to fly the hypotenuse of those points. They'll try to take the most direct path. This is a problem for a lot of reasons. They don't have the power to get there. Once they leave here, they'll run out of power maybe here. And once they run out of power, they're going to look for the nearest power spot anyway, so they're just going to come back down here. And the other thing is they'll get shot down by natives if they try to fly over them. I've lost a lot of resources there, and so that's why I split my networks up. My boxes, like this, are all tight boxes with corners. I don't do any alcoves anymore, because the biters settle in the alcoves, the robots try to fly over the alcoves, you lose resources. So everything is a rectangle with me now. So I have these big rectangles where all my bots can freely fly anywhere they want between them. And then I have this long, narrow rectangle where my bases connect. And they can fly freely between the lasers there too. And since they're only going to hop from starport to starport, they will just go in a straight line. They'll just fly right down this path. And my robots are really fast. I've a ridiculous amount of robot speed. So that is how my power grid works. That's how my lasers work. I have... Let's see. I'll show you this nifty fuel changing system I have. One problem I encountered... Oh, this is my factory. We'll come back to the fuel changing. This factory just built stuff that I might need to build a new base. That's all it builds. So it builds all of my production modules, which once I build a new base, it can take weeks of game time, 24/7 game time, for this base to refill my production module bases. It's still running now. I don't even know what it's refueling from, but those things take forever to make, and I need so many of them to run at capacity. This is where I've made all these solar panels, all 300,000 plus of them. They were made right here. I have a bunch of them in storage, 2.4 thousand in each one of these crates, and then batteries are going to be made over here somewhere. Yep, batteries are made over here. Laser towers are made over here. So I can blueprint this stuff out here, and even if I don't have it, my robots will fill in the network, and they'll just take them as we get them. I'll go to sleep a couple days later. Won't pay attention to it. A couple days later, they'll be complete. I do need to stand there and guard while I build laser walls. So when I do an expansion, I drive the perimeter. I lay out my laser wall. I use a special robot network for the laser wall. When I build the laser wall, I would plop down a new network at the front of it here, and there would be a break, kind of like how I had those handoff networks earlier. There would be a handoff break, so my robots would only fly tightly along the laser network while I build it. So I build the whole perimeter, and then once the perimeter is secure, then I go through and clear out everything in the middle. And it's very time consuming. It took me a long time to lay these solar panels, but they power my entire, outrageous factory without consuming anything. So it's pretty cool. So anyway, that's my factory. It builds solar panels, lights, it builds batteries, it builds... What else we got up here? More explosives. Oh no, these aren't more explosives. These are artillery shells, right. There was a patch where they added artillery shells. So I designed this whole explosive factory here. And it just makes these huge crates of artillery shells. They take up a lot of space. You can only get 48 in a crate, so I have a bunch of crates full of artillery shells. I have a blueprint I can lay out when I do an expansion. I used it for this expansion. You can kind of see the aftermath of it here, actually. So what I did is I drove my lasers out, and then I had my track with lasers, and then I laid out a blueprint I have that puts artillery cannons all around it, and a resupply train that automatically, constantly goes back to my base and grabs artillery shells and brings them back and refills these. And then I just went to bed. And when I got up the next day, everything in this range was cleared out. You see these because I manually fired shells to discover this whole area. When I landed here, I just went around and expunged like 100, 200 shells just to explore the area. But I can automatically clear with those now. So I just have to clear the straight line and then blow everything up with artillery, kind of automatically overnight. That's my artillery factory. Makes its own sulfur on site for it. Here's a bunch of red cards, and green cards, and blue cards that I use to power the factory. Here's where I make my furnaces, and I make all my chests. I make everything. Everything I use, everything in the game, I have automated. There's nothing you can make in this game that I don't have a factory making somewhere. Even the different kinds of concrete that my base is built on here, those are made here in my concrete factory. Here's my bulk storage. This is where my robots store stuff that don't have a specific place. This is also the first priority of where they sort things from. When I tell them to go get me something, when a blueprint summons it, they're going to look here first. And then if it's not in these storage facilities, then they're going to look at the crates that are on my specific factories. This is my manual world building train. So this is the one that will resupply me, the character, when I'm out doing combat. So it brings me a bunch of landfills. When you need landfills, you need hundreds and thousands of landfills. So this train is holding a bunch of them. It's got a bunch of crates stuffed for them, and those crates get supplied by a bunch of these crates that are stuffed with them. I just have lots and lots of these. I'm still making them right now. That's how many I go through. So whenever my character is out flying solo, I always use a track to get there, and I can just call my train to come out and resupply me. It also brings me repair packs, nuclear bombs, atomic shells, bullets. I go through a lot of bullets in that train. It also brings me in these explosives to blow up mountains, and it also brings me an empty train. So anything that I pick up while I'm out, I can put back in this back train, and when it comes back to base, it will unload them into these purple boxes, and the purple boxes my robots will distribute into my yellow boxes. So this is my character supply world building train. This is my gun wagon. The gun wagon is a backwards driving train. So in this one I have the engines in the back and the shells in the front because of the way that the train pulls up to the artillery station. And this one is actually too long. So it has a full resupply, which is this whole train here, pushed by these engines. And then once this one's empty, the train will pull up one space, and there's a second resupply connected to it. And once the second supply ends, this whole two-part train will drive back here and refill, and then go back. So it just has as much as it needs. I'll just send as many as I need. And each one of these has a satellite in it, so these are pretty expensive, but I have a ridiculous amount of resources. That's my gun wagon. Where's my world builder train? Oh, it's parked at the other base, right. So this is my world builder train, and it has all the stuff that I need to build a new factory. It's also got some things going on with some of its computers where it's got some tricky little sorters for some of them, where I want one train to carry 4 things, and I want it to have exactly the right amount of things. So when this train arrives, those boxes are on a timed unload. So it'll unload everything in the barrel, everything in that car, will go back to my network. And then once it's totally empty, these ones will switch on, and they'll empty these boxes into the train. And these boxes have exactly the amount of the item that I want. And then once these are turned off, then these resupply boxes will fill these boxes back to exactly the amount I want. So that's how my world building train functions. Brings me everything I could need. There's my gun wagon. What other trains do I have? I think I have 4 trains that I call on. Yeah, my character supply train. And then in the new world we have the world builder train is parked here because I just recently was working on this one. So that's the trains. We talked about this factory. Yeah, that's Factorio. That's 3,000 hours of Factorio. 90 to 95% of those hours are me sleeping and not actually playing. But I have put a lot of time into playing. Oh, see that red button is something getting hit. Let's go see. Right here. See, this is on a corner here. So it's a little more susceptible. Also, this laser probably shouldn't be here, actually. Yeah, I shouldn't even have that one there. That's why it's getting hit. So let's, I don't remember really how to deconstruct that. Let's tell the robots to come get that. It's been so long I don't remember how to drop the tab. Oh no, don't do that. Yeah, I don't remember how to drop this. So that's where it is. That's how. Oh god. That's how she works. I built these lights also. These are computerized lights that it's a loading bar basically. So my rocket is 80% complete. There was no way to see from the sky view. There is now. You can see it says 82 out of 100 there now at the bottom. 82 out of 100 rocket parts. Back when I designed the light system, that didn't exist. So there was no way to see how far it was from a sky view. And I just kind of wanted to mouse over my factory. So that. Girl, why can't I drop this? So that's Factorio. That's my giant, ridiculous factory. It's massive. It produces an absurd amount. I have extra copper here I'm not even using. That's the copper intake. This is a train stop for when I want to drop my character off to work on the steel smelting plant. It's all perfect now, but for a long time, I would need to ride out here and adjust things periodically. I had to get these sorters just right. I use a combination of red and blue to control the speed at which they move to different parts. So that probably about wraps it up. What am I missing? Here's my main plastic factory. Oh yeah, I was going to show you my oil system. So, when I was building this factory, I kind of went overkill with it. See, I have all these tanks of petroleum here. All these tanks of oil. And then I'm making heavy oil and light oil and all that stuff. All these tanks of light oil. The problem every Factorio player runs into is that you get to a point where your heavy oil or your light oil, there's too much to store. And so your petroleum production stops while you're asleep. And then your petroleum production stops, so your plastic production stops, so your circuit card production stops, and then everything stops. So, to amend that problem, I devised this system that dumps excess... Where did I put the heavy oil? It dumps excess light oil to become heavy oil. And it also has the ability to crack heavy oil into light oil. And this way, there's never a max. There's never a surplus. It's never congested. If it ever gets to the point where the heavy oil or the light oil is going to fill up, it will convert it back into the other one. So then we can only be maxed out at petroleum. And if we're maxed out at petroleum, then we don't need any oil anyway, because petroleum is what makes everything go. And that oil system is based on some computers I have here somewhere. Well, it works by turning off the line and turning on another line. And I don't know where I put the computers. But that's my old factory. And in the new factory, it's in a much tighter kind of row. So in the new factory, you can see my heavy oil to light oil cracking is here. And in this one, I figured out exactly how many I need of this, so there's no wasted space. When it's in worst case scenario, it's just enough. Here's my row of light oil, but you can see here's a big difference. I have 1 tank of light oil here, and my red wire is connected to it, and that pump in my computers. We're going to autosave now. We really take our time autosaving. There we are. And it's just flickering on and off. You see it right there. It's red light. It'll go green for, there it is, green for just a second. So for just a second, periodically, that pump goes on because we have excess light oil. That flickering light right there keeps the whole factory alive. That system balances the whole factory. I only have 2 tanks of petroleum and 1 tank of heavy oil. So I keep a very low supply here. And that matters a lot because I'm always improving my efficiency, my mining efficiency. So anything that I cannot harvest till the future is going to give me more value in the long run also. And you can see here, it's periodically making petroleum and dumping it into these tanks. They get priority. The tanks will take petroleum out of the light oil before it'll take them from the petroleum tanks. We got plastic, we got coal, we got all sorts of certain cards. Alright, well I hope that wasn't too crazy and overwhelming. This is a complex game. Also, I had no plan going into this tour, so if I'm rambling and trying to figure it out a little bit in there, that's why. Here's my science packs within one of the blocks. I designed this part when I got the block together to have like the rocket ship kind of in the middle, and then the science in the middle, so at night it's just this glowing part here. Looks pretty cool. Notes I've made to myself while designing. That's the computer system that controls this backup power plant here. Counts. It uses the same fish signal system as from before. So the green block here represents where my bots can fly to repair something. The orange network, though, represents their supply line. So you can see there's a different supply line here. But for no reason, because my supply line connects here. Anywhere I don't need lasers, I don't put lasers, because they have a passive upkeep cost for their electricity. So like these gaps here, there's no lasers. Because if something tried to sneak around here, the lasers would tag it from way out here, and it would run right to the center of them. More over here, what's going on? Boom. More ore over here. Just constantly at war. Oh yeah, here's my demolition zone. This area is cool. This is where I take stuff to blow up that I'm done with. So, mostly that's wood. So in this game, as you're clearing a bunch of space, you'll just end up with an absurd amount of wood that just clogs up your inventory. So this system has all of my bots take all my wood here, puts them into these blue boxes, and they get moved back here, and it fills up over time. Once it's pretty full, I have a blueprint over here in this box here. I go get the blueprint out that I copy over this, and it takes out everything except these wooden crates. And my robots have exactly enough clearance to build it from these on the edge. And then after that blueprint goes off, everything's cleared out and it leaves a target spot in the middle. And I just drop a nuke right there on that target spot, destroy all the wood, use the other blueprint in the box to And it's even got nukes in the box for me in case I need them. Use the other blueprint in the box to rebuild it all, and I've had to do that 3 times maybe since I built this. Wood congestion used to be a big problem for me. That's why I designed this box here. So this is kind of a safe zone that's measured out and tells me, like I did a lot of trial and error with it, so if I hit it in the center, it just barely, the nuke doesn't touch these walls at all. So that's the radius a nuke has in this game. So that's a cool thing I got going. Yeah, right, that's probably enough Factorio for this year. So I hope you enjoyed the tour of my factory. This game is totally worth a try, and have a good day.